Welcome. I am a lay Shin Buddhist who nevertheless maintains an interest in the broader realm of Pure Land and Mahayana Buddhist teachings. My YouTube channel is called Akala Akala, that is A-C-A-L-A, A-C-A-L-A. In these podcasts, I make a non-scholarly, humble, and sometimes bumbling attempt to explore a particular topic or question related to the wonderful Buddha Dharma. I hope you find them to be of interest. With that said, let us begin. Now, in Chapter 3 of the Tanisho, which is a book that I've been quoting some from in a couple previous podcasts, Shinran is said to have reinforced the notion that the vow of Dharmakara Bodhisattva was, in fact, primarily geared to the needs of the evil person, the person who has not necessarily performed good. And he states this in a paradoxical way, which one needs to reflect on in order to appreciate the meaning. He says in Chapter 3, "Even a good person can attain birth in the Pure Land, so it goes without saying that an evil person will." So this is kind of the opposite of the way we usually think of sort of the benefits of living a good life or having positive karma and being able to look forward to some favorable rebirth, if you will. He goes on to explain, and this is again according to Yenbo, the author of this volume, who was a disciple of Shinran and purportedly is communicating to us in the Tanisho Shinran's actual words. "Though such is the truth, people commonly say, even an evil person attains birth, so naturally a good person will." This statement may seem well-founded at first, but it runs counter to the meaning of the other power established through the primal vow. For a person who relies on the good that he does through his self-power fails to entrust himself wholeheartedly to other power and therefore is not in accord with Amita's primal vow. So here we come back to the term entrusting. And entrusting in this sense, as it is associated with this notion that Shinran describes as Shinjin, true entrusting, sincere mind, it's a full and complete kind of commitment to the power of the vow as opposed to the power of our own acts, our own goodness, if you will. We can perform good acts. We can study the Dharma. We can do things that represent forms of rituals, religious rituals, meditational rituals, spiritual rituals, mantras, etc. But the point is, to the extent that we rely upon those for our rebirth in the Pure Land, we're bound for failure. And it's more likely that a person who's capable of performing such good acts is inclined, out of a lack of humility really, to think that, hey, I'm a good person, and on that basis I should get a good reward. But again, that's not how it works in terms of what Dharmakara's intent was in creating his Pure Land of Bliss and endowing in his 18th vow the power that it has to save us if we rely upon it exclusively, if we fully entrust in it. So before going on, again, that first sentence, just to listen to it in the context of an understanding of its paradoxical meaning. Even a good person can attain birth in the Pure Land, so it goes without saying that an evil person will. And then again he says, "Though such is the truth, people commonly say, even an evil person attains birth, so naturally a good person will." And he says, "This statement may seem well-founded at first, but it runs counter to the meaning of the other power established through the primal vow." So Shinran's whole doctrine, the whole thrust of his interpretation of the tradition within Mahayana Buddhism, of Pure Land Buddhism, is to move the doctrine more and more into a direction of pure grace as the essence, pure reliance upon other power. And he does so in what really amounts to the most extreme and complete way. In effect, he's saying, these good works don't do us any good in terms of this objective that we have with respect to our religious or spiritual aspirations. So as Wenbo continues to describe Shinran's words in this third chapter of the Tanisho, he says that what Shinran asserts is that when a person abandons his or her attachment to self-power and entrusts himself totally to other power, he will realize birth in the Pure Land. Let's hear that again. When a person abandons their attachment to self-power and entrusts themselves totally to other power, he will realize birth in the Pure Land. And of course, that birth is realized when we die, at which point, according to Shinran, we immediately attain Buddhahood. We attain the ultimate goal that's described in the Lotus Sutra and in the other Mahayana sutras. Every person is construed as having the Buddha nature, and every person ultimately will become a Buddha. And in Shinran's system, we become a Buddha when we're reborn in the Pure Land, at which point we have the option to come back and to help beings with a great deal of compassion and skillful means. So Shinran says, it is impossible for us, filled as we are with blind passions, to free ourselves from birth and death through any practice whatever. Sorrowing at this, Amida made the vow, the essential intent of which is the attainment of Buddhahood by the person who is evil. Hence, the evil person who entrusts himself to other power is precisely the one who possesses the true cause for birth. Accordingly, Yenbo tells us that Shinran said, even the virtuous person is born in the Pure Land, so without question is the person who is evil. And there I've substituted the word person for man. You know, in any of these Mahayana scriptures, we need to recognize that they were composed at a time when, as far as I'm aware, most, if not all, of the cultures in the world, all of the civilizations were male-dominated. And so this is what we hear a lot in the scriptures is reference to man, him, etc., my good son. Although in the Lotus Sutra, there are many places where, I'm not sure if the translator did this, I doubt it, but it's a phrase from the Buddha that says, good sons and daughters, and so that's a positive. But, we certainly need to sort of do some translation in our mind when we read the term man to recognize the sort of gender bias that existed back in the day, in this case, back in the 13th century. I might mention as a sidebar there that within Shin Buddhism, in its modern form, there definitely are women priests. So what is this path of sages, or this more difficult path that Shinran is saying we should abandon in favor of entrusting Amida's primal vow? He explains some of that in the 4th chapter of the Tani Sho, where he says, in the matter of compassion, the path of sages and the Pure Land path differ. Compassion in the path of sages is to pity, sympathize with, and care for beings. But the desire to save others from suffering is vastly difficult to fulfill. And, anybody listening to this can give testimony to that effect. Yes, there is some sense in which we can help other people if we're motivated to do it. And I suspect that anybody listening to this podcast has such a motivation. But there's limits on the extent to which we can help. And I can't articulate for you what those limits are in your particular circumstances. I can do it for myself, and I can tell you there are limits. But if you think about it, you'll see that doing so is, as Shinran says, vastly difficult. But he says, compassion in the Pure Land path lies in saying the name, quickly attaining Buddhahood, which, as I said, was when we're reborn in the Pure Land. And then he says, and then freely benefiting sentient beings with a heart of great love and great compassion. In our present lives, Shinran says, it is hard to carry out the desire to aid others, however much love and tenderness we may feel. Hence, such compassion always falls short of fulfillment. Only saying of the name manifests the heart of great compassion that is replete and thoroughgoing. With that, I will sign off by reciting the Nembutsu in gratitude for being embraced and accepted just as I am by Amida Buddha, never, never to be abandoned. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu.